Top of the hour on NBC News Now, we start with the deadly rodent virus that is now here in the U.S. More than a dozen Americans evacuated from a cruise ship and now in quarantine. We're going to take you live to Atlanta, where two of those passengers are now with big questions about where the Dutch ship goes from here. Also new at this hour, we'll take you near a fast-moving wildfire near the Florida Everglades, burning thousands of acres. Our NBC team has an up-close look. Then President Trump's new warning to Iran after he rejected the latest deal to end the war.
I would say the ceasefire is on massive life support.
While the pressure is on ahead of his trip to China. Plus, we'll take you to Massachusetts. A man opening fire in the direction of police officers. Those details just coming into our newsroom. And in our original, we'll introduce you to a pickleball superstar many consider to be the greatest of all time. And she is only 19. We'll meet her later in our newscast. Good day. I'm Tom Costello in for Hallie on this Monday. And right now, 18 people who were on board that cruise ship at the center of a deadly rodent virus outbreak are being monitored at medical centers in Nebraska and Georgia. So here's the video of some of those passengers being evacuated after landing in Atlanta earlier this morning, covered head to toe in protective suits, as you can see. Doctors at the National Quarantine Unit in Nebraska say 16 of the passengers are under observation there for the time being. One of those patients has tested positive for the hantavirus, so that person is in a biocontainment unit. Two others were taken to a medical center in Atlanta. One of those passengers is now showing symptoms. Now, we're expecting to get an update from doctors there in just the next few minutes. Meanwhile, President Trump talking about the situation earlier today.
I hope it's fine. All I can do is everything that a president can do, which is actually somewhat limited.
One of the American patients in Nebraska posted this on social media today. I'm okay and feeling well. He says the flight over was smooth, in his words. Meanwhile, overseas medical crews helped evacuate dozens of other passengers who were still left on that boat. And that's what you're seeing right there. Just before that got underway, we heard from the ship's captain, who sent a message of appreciation to his crew and to the passengers.
The past few weeks have been extremely challenging to us all, as I'm sure you know. What touched me the most, what moved me the most, was your patience, your discipline, and also kindness.
Dr. Kavita Patel is on standby for our medical questions. Aaron Gilchrist is in Atlanta, where some of those passengers are quarantining. Aaron, we start with you. What do we know about how those two passengers in Atlanta, how they're doing right now?
Well, Tom, you mentioned that the folks here at Emory University Hospital are expected to give us an update near the bottom of the hour. And so we hope to be able to get more specifics about how those two people are doing here at the facility inside the hospital here. I can tell you that we do know that this is a couple that was brought here to Atlanta. All 18 of those passengers were flown to the United States. 16 dropped off in Nebraska. 2 of them brought here to Atlanta, which was really just a move that's about logistics, if you will. They wanted to make sure they had enough space in both places to treat anybody who may become sick or sicker. You can see some footage of the full quarantine protocols that were in place, bringing those two passengers into the hospital here in Atlanta. We're told one of them had some symptoms. We weren't really given a detailed description about those symptoms. The other person is a close contact of the person who had the symptoms. They were told there were a couple, and so that person is here as well, being monitored and evaluated, while the other person is in a facility where they can be treated if necessary, if they should become positive for hantavirus. I can also tell you that there is an effort now to make sure that people, the public, is aware of what they need to know about this virus. The fact that the potential for communication is very low. That's something we're hearing over and over again from health officials. I want you to hear from an epidemiologist at Emory University. She is not connected to the treatment of the passengers that were brought here, but she is an expert in this field of infectious disease. I want you to hear what she told me earlier today about what's happening right now in the process.
They are checking them to make sure that they're doing well and they're medically stable, which all of them do appear to be. They also don't have to stay there that entire 42 days. They actually can move home and continue their quarantine there.
Now, we've already heard from several states that have said that some of those 18 people that were brought back early this morning are from those states, Utah, New York, North Carolina among them. And Utah, for example, has said that when it is safe for their residents to come back to Utah, they do intend to continue monitoring them. So even folks who are not showing symptoms right now, Tom, will still be monitored by state health officials.
Aaron Gilchrist in Atlanta. Aaron, thanks very much. We want to turn right now to Dr. Kavita Patel for the key takeaways here. Doctor, you know, as I understand it, the doctors are monitoring these patients, but at some point, these patients may be allowed to self-quarantine at home. And I think when people hear that, that makes people a little nervous, right? What would the risk be if passengers who could be potentially carrying this virus are self-quarantining?
Yeah, by the time that they were able to make that decision, which could unfold in the next couple of days, Tom, we'll know that their tests, likely several tests, have been negative and that they have no symptoms, at which point, because the transmission, we don't really have any documented cases of what we call asymptomatic transmission like we did during COVID. So that threat and just the ability to isolate and quarantine at home is enough to make it very low risk and very reassuring. So
but the incubation period could be 6 weeks.
It can be. So 42 days. Day one starts at your last known exposure. So whatever that could be for each of those individuals. So those 42 days, yes. And like you heard, I think local health officials are going to do everything to make sure that there is either some sort of telemedicine, direct observed therapy, some check-ins. That'll consist of symptom monitoring and kind of management and perhaps more testing as well.
Well, there was one individual. Now, the French health minister is saying that one French passenger who tested positive has, in fact, gotten worse overnight. So there are a handful of cases, of positive cases, right? And I'm just wondering how quickly this has spread and might it spread?
Yeah. So right now what we know of with the cases all have a very kind of logical transmission pattern, people in close proximity to others with symptoms. Not a single case thus far has been what we would call a surprise from an epidemiological perspective. So obviously these are all people who were at high risk because they were on the ship and in close proximity to someone that had had symptoms, in particular the French case, South Africa as well, which that patient is actually getting better, a British individual. This is all very concerning if you are one of those people in close contact.
Sure, of course. Absolutely. Doctor, thank you very much. We'll be back to you with more questions, I'm sure. We have more news now. Breaking news out of France as well and out of New York at this hour. But let's start with France. We're now learning health authorities, authorities in Paris, foiled a planned terrorist attack on a museum there. France's anti-terrorism police tell us law enforcement took a 27-year-old man from Tunisia into custody last week. He's now charged with conspiracy to commit a terrorist act. The agency tells us a source close to the investigation says that the attack targeted the Jewish community and a Paris museum, although it did not specify which museum. But French newspaper Le Monde reports he was planning to attack the Louvre, which sees tens of thousands of visitors a day, many of them, of course, American. NBC's Tom Winter is covering this one for us from New York. Tom, what else are we learning about what this individual was allegedly planning and how authorities caught up with him?
Yeah, Tom, still a lot of details to be worked out, and not a lot of briefings have been provided to American law enforcement at this point. But I think it is important to note that this attack was stopped prior to it occurring. You're looking at photos there of the Louvre. That, according to Le Monde, in a report that we have not confirmed, was potentially one of the targets, along with members of the Jewish community, and authorities had not described, as of last we checked in with them, who those targets might have been either. But it appears that a 27-year-old man, who they have not identified by name, has been charged, is being held pending trial, according to authorities and various sources we've spoken with in France. This individual coming from Tunisia, so northern Africa, which has been a spot of potential terrorist activity, coming to Europe. A number of successful attacks, unfortunately, have originated from countries in the northern part of Africa. This individual, according to some reports there, had conducted at least some indications of some pre-operational planning, or at least scouting out of possible locations. But the details, again, still not a ton being provided to American authorities. Of course, all this, Tom, comes as we've been covering here for the last several weeks, a number of attacks against the Jewish community throughout Europe and the UK, specifically in the UK, a knife attack going back to a synagogue injuring two weeks ago. There have been a number of other incidents of attempted arson and actual arson attacks, all being investigated by counterterrorism police there, as well as in Brussels and in other countries. So that's really been kind of a focus for the counterterrorism community at large in Europe. And obviously this comes on the heels of October 7th and Hamas's attack and Israel's response, as well as obviously the war that's going on with Iran.
And Tom, with your connections there in New York, all of these intelligence agencies around the world, including the NYPD, they're constantly talking, right?
Yes, and to be clear, I've not spoken to anybody here at the NYPD today. This is all coming from authorities overseas. But yes, everybody is always talking all the time in these communities and sharing information. That's a big reason why, Tom, the Taylor Swift attack in Vienna, Austria was foiled. That was work of the FBI's New York field office, the Joint Terrorism Task Force here, as well as Austrian authorities on top of that situation, preventing a deadly incident 2 summers ago.
Yep. Tom Winter in New York. Tom, thanks very much. At this hour, fire crews are rushing to stop a fast-moving wildfire in the Florida Everglades. Now, it's already burned more than 11,000 acres. Here's the video. It looks like a wall of fire there. Florida's Forest Service says it's 50% contained after breaking out yesterday. Police say the flames are not a major threat right now, but they are warning people to avoid the area. NBC's Jesse Kirsch joins us now. And Jesse, how worried are fire commanders right now about this wildfire's proximity to homes?
Yeah, well, what I can tell you, Tom, is it's burning behind us in the Everglades. We are just outside of the Everglades, an area known for having a lot of greenery, a lot of water, a lot of fuel for a wildfire. And that is, but also important to note, not a population center. And I wanted to stress, I'm wearing the mask right now because we were in there earlier. And as often happens with wildfire, you have the wind that can change the direction of a wildfire. And what happened was we were probably, I'd say, about a mile that way in the park. And we were right near the fire line. We were there with the firefighters. It was kind of a staging area for some of their vehicles. We could see the chopper dropping water from overhead. And then the wind was changing direction. The flames were kicking up. And next thing you know, this plume of smoke, this cloud of smoke was moving overhead. We started to see ash falling from the sky. And so we got in our vehicles and got out of there. So we've retreated to this area. And as we were moving out, we saw multiple fire officials racing in, multiple fire trucks, fire engines making their way into the area. So clearly they were focused that much more on that area as that unfolded. We're a good ways back now. The smoke has also died down quite a bit from even just about 30 minutes ago, but we can still smell the smoke in the air. And obviously this is not the kind of stuff you want to be breathing in. And officials have made a point of saying that even if the fire is not near you, the smoke can travel for miles, and that can be something that is hazardous to breathe in. So if you are smelling that smoke, they're telling people to stay inside, keep the windows shut, which is a common refrain we hear in situations like this. The fire, again, is not near population centers. It has been moving northwest, away from Miami, away from Fort Lauderdale, away from these population centers into the Everglades, but it has also exploded in size, gone from 5 to 7 to now more than 11,000 acres, but 50% containment, and we know the firefighters are keeping an eye on it, Tom.
Yeah, you're absolutely smart to wear that mask. Jesse, thanks very much. Back here in Washington, President Trump says the U.S. ceasefire with Iran is, quote, on life support. His words. The president has rejected Iran's latest offer, which Iranian state media says includes demands for the U.S. to pay Iran reparations. Tehran also wants the U.S. and allies to unfreeze billions of dollars in Iranian assets. And the regime wants recognition of its control over the Strait of Hormuz. President Trump put it bluntly that none of it sounds like a starting point to him.
They come back and they want to negotiate, and they give us it's a stupid proposal. I would say the ceasefire is on massive life support, where the doctor walks in and says, sir, your loved one has approximately a 1% chance of living.
But the president faces the political reality now of rising gas prices, now at $4.52 a gallon nationally. President Trump floated a possible suspension of the federal gas tax. Now, we should note that would have consequences because that tax is used to build, to fix, to maintain highways and bridges nationwide. Suspending the tax would not bring prices back to pre-war prices. Mr. Trump would also need Congress to sign off on the plan. NBC's Keir Simmons is in Doha, Qatar for us. And Keir, when you talk with various government reps there in the Gulf, do they think that the Iranians are negotiating in good faith here? And do they think the Americans are?
Well, they think there's a distance, a huge distance between the two sides. That's for certain. There are different governments in this region that have different ways of looking at this, but certainly one aspect of the whole thing is that where I am now, Qatar and a number of other countries here really rely on the Strait of Hormuz, and they are very concerned that one of the proposals in the Iranian counter-proposal that President Trump was talking about there, they're very concerned that one of the ideas there from the Iranians is that they should have sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz. There are also state media reports, Iranian state media reports, that they expect to have large amounts of frozen funds released. And I'm talking about billions of dollars are held, for example, here in Qatar that, ostensibly belong to the Iranians but have been held for many years. So you can see why President Trump is not impressed. And then we did have the Prime Minister of Israel over the weekend giving his own interview saying that the war isn't over if they haven't solved the nuclear issue the way that Iran, the uranium that Iran has. So there are so many issues here. It's so complex.
Yeah. Let's talk about the state of the strait, if you will. The CEO of Saudi Arabia's state-owned oil and gas company says, quote, normalization of prices would not return until well into 2027 if the strait's opening is delayed by more than a few more weeks. Does Iran have any intention of bringing the world back to a pre-war status quo in the strait?
No, is the answer to that. When you say Iran, I mean, obviously, remember there are different factions in Iran, so there are some that are more interested in negotiating than others, but certainly the Iranians collectively are indicating that they think that they have leverage and that the strait provides them with leverage. To your point about the economic impact here, I think there's an interesting aspect to all of this, and that is that we're in a kind of an economic game of chicken where the Iranian economy is in crisis, but the world economy is facing a crisis. Which comes first? And again, with these Gulf countries, for example, they face serious consequences if this continues for weeks and months. And at the same time, there is a whole issue for the airline industry, as you know very well yourself, Tom, in terms of fuel. So there are all of these different aspects kind of competing with each other and raising the question, at what moment will either side blink? Will they come to a negotiation given those extraordinary risks?
Yeah. Keir Simmons in Doha, thank you very much. The president has suggested for months that the Iran war should wrap up before his visit to China. Well, that visit is this week. Mr. Trump will meet with China's Xi Jinping, and Iran will likely play a large part in conversations.
I have a great relationship with President Xi. And I think you can see that with the fact that in Hormuz, they get a big percentage, 40% of their oil from Hormuz. There's been no ships coming in, no nasty ships coming in that we end up in skirmishes with. He'd like to see it get done.
Big business is on the agenda, too. Also on this trip, CEOs from all of the companies you see on the screen there. Among the biggest, Apple, Boeing, Goldman Sachs, Meta, and of course, Tesla, SpaceX CEO Elon Musk, the man once in charge of DOGE, the effort to cut government last year. NBC's Ryan Nobles is at the White House. Ryan, is that a sign that the president wants this to be all about business, this trip to China?
There's no doubt, Tom, that the economy will be front and center for the president on this visit to China. He wants to continue the business relationship between the two countries that at times has been strained. He has complained about the trade imbalance often between China and the United States, but at the same time wants to open up the Chinese market to all these different American companies and these CEOs that both sell goods to the Chinese, but also manufacture goods in China, which are then sold back here to the United States. So there has been a back and forth over tariffs and taxes and trade between the two countries. President Trump would like this to be the focus of this meeting, but there are obviously so many other issues going around the world that directly impact China, that the United States is at the forefront of, Iran being the best example. So it's clear that this won't be the only thing that they talk about during this, what could be a historic visit, Tom.
Okay, well, among the other things could be Taiwan, right? China has made it very clear it believes it should have possession of Taiwan. You were with the president today. Does he sound at all interested in talking Taiwan with Xi?
Well, in a question from me, Tom, the president said directly that he expects President Xi to talk more about Taiwan than he will talk about Taiwan. But that being said, he knows it is an issue that will come up. The sovereignty of Taiwan, their ability to operate as a free country, even though they're not completely independent of China, is something that President Xi is obsessed with. And one of the reasons that China's been able to be held at bay is because the United States supplies Taiwan with weapons. And that's something that President Trump hasn't been completely comfortable with. And I asked him about that today. Take a listen.
There's a lot of support for Taiwan from Japan and from countries from that area.
Do you think we should still be selling them weapons? The United States should
Well, I'm going to have that discussion with President Xi. President Xi would like us not to, and I'll have that discussion.
Notably there, Tom, the president did not say that the United States will or will not continue to sell weapons. But keep in mind, this is something that's been appropriated by the United States Congress. It is essentially law. So if the president were to stop the sale of weapons, which has been slowed down quite a bit, that would be in a direct opposition to what congressional leaders have asked him to do. So this is a significant thing that the president and the leaders of China will be talking about this week.
And bipartisan support in Congress as well. Ryan Nobles, thank you very much. It will surely be a very busy week. Be sure to tune in all week. Tom Yamas will be anchoring NBC Nightly News and Top Story all week live from Beijing for this U.S.-China summit. We are tracking breaking news out of Massachusetts at this hour. A man is in custody after opening fire on a busy street. Our Boston station just got this video. We want to warn you, it is disturbing. So you can hear what appear to be loud pops of what may be gunfire, and you see a man believed to be the suspect carrying a rifle there. There's some of the damage seen on the ground there, what appears to be a bullet hole through the windshield of a postal truck. NBC's Sam Brock joins us now. He's watching the story. Sam, what have you learned so far?
What we've learned, Tom, at least from some of the reporting on the ground there from our station NBC Boston that spoke with witnesses, is this really could have been a mass casualty type of situation. It's fairly remarkable that it didn't end up that way. Here's that haunting video you just showed our viewers a second ago. There's apartment complexes all up and down the street. It's Memorial Drive there in Cambridge. The man is walking along the Charles River. It's about 5 minutes south of Harvard Square. You have apartments. There are parks nearby, a Whole Foods supermarket. There's folks in the water. And he, according to witnesses, appears to be indiscriminately just taking his long gun and firing at cars. A couple of them that we spoke with say that they were just driving along. A couple men that had actually just left their job for the day, a construction project, saw cars in front of them turn around and start rushing backwards. One man says he got out of the car and then saw this guy standing 25 feet away and he ducked underneath his dashboard. Another one said he fired bullets into his engine and headlights. So it is fairly remarkable given that context. So far, we're only hearing about potentially 2 victims in this. I'm going to call your attention as you look at the scene there, right? There's cars up against trees. You mentioned the bullet hole inside of a windshield of a postal truck. Harvard University's police department did issue a statement in which they said that the person is in custody. They said there is no ongoing threat right now to the public. Please avoid this area. Obviously, that goes without saying. They also said there's potentially 2 people injured. Massachusetts State Police say that EMS was actually treating at least 1 person with a gunshot wound. Not clear if that's the shooter or someone else, but we are expecting an update from state police and from Cambridge police really any minute. As you just see, a jarring scene here. But let's take a quick listen to the witnesses.
I'm more surprised that it happened in Cambridge of all places. Not so surprised that it happened in general.
Mondays, man. Mondays are tough here in Boston. I don't know. It's Cambridge. It's not supposed to be like this. We're supposed to be in the nice part.
One man was actually waiting for his wife, Tom, and after he spoke with our reporter there, he just was in a long embrace with him. They're just grateful to be alive, given the just barrage of gunfire they witnessed. Tom?
On the Cambridge side of the river, not the Boston side, right there, Sam?
Correct. On the Cambridge side, looking toward Boston. That is correct.
Yep. Sam Brock, thanks very much. All right, now to that deadly collision at Denver International Airport and new surveillance video of the incident obtained by NBC News. Before we show it to you, though, we want to warn you, it is disturbing. You can see a person walking onto the runway in the footage here with a Frontier plane just seconds away from taking off. We're going to stop this video just before the collision, but we know that that person on the runway was killed and 5 on board went to the hospital. Investigators are still trying to figure out who that person was and why and how he or she was on the runway at 11:19 p.m. on Friday. Videos from on board show the scary moment of impact, the right side engine catching fire and passengers screaming. Here's what the pilot radioed air traffic control.
We just hit somebody. We have an engine fire.
It does appear to be human remains on the runway.
So to give you a sense of where this happened, Denver International has the largest airport footprint in North America, covering an area that's about 1.5 to 2 times the size of Manhattan, twice the size of Chicago O'Hare. Having been on the runways there when they were laid back in the 90s and again last year, I can tell you it's massive. NBC's Liz Kreutz has been in Denver for the last few days. And Liz, this airport is so big, the question is, how did this one person get out there in the first place, right? Over this barbed wire fence in that remote section of the airport.
Yeah. Hey, Tom, I know you know this airport well. I was just out there for several days, and it is somewhat of a mystery. At the same time, though, you know, our team, we were able to walk right up to that barbed wire fence. It is about 10 to 12 feet tall with barbed wire at the top as per TSA regulations. 36 miles of this fencing all around the airport. We were able to walk right up to it. There was security. They were driving around the perimeter. Sure there's cameras as well. But as experts have told us, as we saw in this case, if there is someone who wants to get over, they can probably find a way over. Now, we don't know where exactly on the airport property this person was able to breach the perimeter. We do know from Denver Airport that they scaled the fence. They said that it seemed like the fence line was found to be intact. And the Denver Airport CEO said this was a horrible and preventable tragedy that has affected many due to the actions of one person who apparently trespassed at an airport and then lost their life, Tom.
You know, again, having been there, I'm assuming that if they get an alert that somebody or something has kind of violated that fence, it takes a long time for the police to respond from the airport terminal all the way out there, right? So what is the airport saying about what it will do to address these security lapses going forward?
Exactly. I mean, I think it's really hard to really give a scope of how big this airport is. It's just miles and miles of field, and it was dark. Exactly. It's more than twice the size of Manhattan. So we're talking a massive space. It was dark, right? This happened around 11 p.m. at night. One person, where we got up to on the fence, by the map we're able to draw, it was about half a mile away from the nearest runway. So when you figure that, you can see how this is possible. The airport is saying that they are going to perform an incident analysis and after action in the coming days, and that this is going to include reviewing the perimeter security program, Tom.
Yeah. Liz, thanks for your reporting. Great news. A great job on the reporting there. Some breaking news into us late today. The Supreme Court has just extended the nationwide access to a widely used abortion medication for at least the next 3 days. Now, the move gives the justices more time to consider what to do next in a case that could block access to the abortion pill mifepristone by mail. It's a major test for nationwide abortion access following the Dobbs decision. That was the 2022 Supreme Court ruling that ended the constitutional right to an abortion in the country. We're going to follow this story closely, and we'll keep you posted. Still ahead from us, we're keeping a very close eye on that podium because in just a few minutes, hospital authorities in Atlanta are going to give us an update on 2 patients from that hantavirus cruise ship who arrived there for treatment. We're going to bring that live. And then a massive fire erupting at a recycling plant where we're learning from the scene in North Dakota. Plus, a Texas man accused of murder escapes to Italy, what he said today in an Italian courtroom. We're back with a case of a Texas man accused of killing his pregnant wife and escaping to Italy just weeks before his murder trial was set to begin. In an Italian courtroom today, Lee Gilly asked a judge for protection against being brought back to the United States, claiming he was wrongly blamed for the murder and then he fled to avoid facing the death penalty back home. Court documents show that Gilly cut off his ankle monitor while out on bail and traveled to Italy under a fake name. He was arrested after showing a fake Belgian passport to Italian authorities. NBC's Priscilla Thompson following this story for us. And Priscilla, how was he able to escape, and what are the next steps now for his case in Italy and also here in the United States?
Yeah, Tom, so court documents show that on May 1st, Gilly cut off his ankle monitor and then he fled. He hopped on a Air Canada flight that stopped through Canada before landing in Milan. And when he arrived in Milan, authorities recognized that his passports and identification were forged. And Gilly essentially came clean and explained who he was obviously taken into custody. We know that he was in court today, where we heard him tell the judge that he did not want to be extradited. He said that he fled because he feared that he was going to be killed. And he also professed his innocence. And he also said in court today, quote, "I chose Europe because of its due process guarantees and Italy because there is strong public opposition to the death penalty." And of course, that is something that he very well could be facing here in Texas, as he was expected to go to trial later this month for killing his pregnant wife. Police saying that he strangled her back in October of 2024. Now, the Harris County District Attorney's Office had not said whether or not they would be seeking the death penalty, but it is certainly a possibility in a case like this. Now, as for what is sort of going to happen next, his attorney has said that at this point they're waiting for notice from the U.S. that they are going to formally seek that extradition, which is almost certain to come.
Yeah, so Gilly is also making the argument that there's a media campaign against him here in the United States, preventing him from getting a fair trial. And then I understand a judge in Texas issued a gag order on the case just days ago. So where does that leave what can and can't be said about this case publicly?
Yeah, so that judge issued the gag order on Friday, saying that it was to ensure that he did get a fair trial and that the jury pool wasn't tainted by all of, especially with this new media coverage as he has fled the state. And so anyone connected to this case, that goes for attorneys, staff of attorneys, and investigators, anyone connected to this case cannot talk about the character or credibility or reputation of any party or witness, what a party or witness is expected to testify about, and a whole host of other things that they are prohibiting. Tom?
But he was accused of murder, yet he was out before his trial with an ankle bracelet.
Yes, he was out on bail since October of 2024, basically $1 million bail. And I will say the family is reacting to this, and friends of the victim, Krista. And so we heard them, who were obviously not happy about the fact that he had been out on bail. And now to see this happen, very disappointed, especially with this past weekend being Mother's Day. And we know that Krista was, according to police, about 8 weeks pregnant when she was killed. And she also has 2 other young children. Tom?
Priscilla Thompson, thank you very much. Over now to the 5 things her team thinks you may want to know about this evening. Number 1, 6 people have been found dead in a cargo train in Texas. The identities of the victims were not immediately released. Medical examiners tell NBC News the victims likely died of heat stroke. It's not clear where the train came from. Police are investigating. The train company says it's saddened by the incident. Number 2, the man accused of attempting to assassinate President Trump at the White House Correspondents' Dinner pleaded not guilty in federal court today. 31-year-old Cole Allen charged with attempted assassination, assaulting a federal officer with a deadly weapon, and 2 gun charges. He faces up to life in prison if convicted. Number 3, take a look at this massive fire at a recycling plant in North Dakota. Multiple fire departments and water trucks were brought in to fight the flames. Thankfully, nobody was injured. Exactly what caused this fire, this huge fire, not yet clear. Number 4, recess is crucial to good health and good grades for children. That according to new guidelines by the American Academy of Pediatrics. It's the first update in 13 years. The group says recess is a necessary break that improves kids' emotional, social, and physical development. The change comes after schools across the country have cut back on recess for years. Number 5, are you ready for some football? The full NFL schedule will be released this week. But we just learned the Cowboys and the Giants will open up Sunday Night Football slate of games, and you know where you can watch it on September 13th. Let the music play right here on NBC. All right, lots more ahead. Another look at the podium in Atlanta. Officials there at the hospital are about to give us an update on 2 people from that hantavirus cruise ship who just arrived there for treatment. We'll bring that to you live when it begins. Another tech giant has been roped into the high-stakes Elon Musk OpenAI trial. What Microsoft's CEO was pressed about on the stand. And later, how an unwanted guest was chased out of a Tennessee hotel. You gotta see this. We're coming back. Breaking news. We're right now going back down to Atlanta, a live news conference from the hospital where they are treating 2 of the hantavirus patients. Let's listen in.
So I'll start with a quick update on our current situation. This weekend, we learned of the possible and then confirmed diagnosis of the Andes virus, hantavirus infection on the MV Hondias cruise ship. Since that time, Emory University's Serious Communicable Diseases Unit, NETEC, and our 13 RESPECT facilities around the country have been preparing for the care of patients with Andes virus. We have been preparing for years for viruses such as Andes viruses, and we are well aware of how hantaviruses such as Andes viruses affect the human body and how physician colleagues, healthcare colleagues around the country, around the world, have been treating patients in years past with viruses such as this. In our preparation, we had our teams put together. We developed all the information we needed for this care. And this morning, the Emory Serious Communicable Diseases Unit was asked and did receive 2 individuals from the MV Hondias cruise ship following their evacuation from the Canary Islands. One individual was deemed to be symptomatic on evaluation prior to leaving the Canary Islands, and the second individual was considered an asymptomatic but close contact to this primary individual. And both are here at Emory in our Serious Communicable Diseases Unit. One is undergoing treatment, and the other one is undergoing further evaluation and monitoring. Our team performed very well. We performed as expected with our partners. We really want to thank all of our federal, state, and local partners, and particularly Grady EMS, who we've trained with for years, who brought the patient very safely and efficiently from Hartsfield-Jackson to the Emory facility. We had a very easy and expected transfer of both individuals into our unit without any problems. We are also thankful for our continued and in real-time collaboration with Georgia Department of Public Health, CDC, and our colleagues at ASPR who supported this mission and continue to support us as we move forward. We have the Emory Serious Communicable Diseases Unit was started in 2002 with the collaboration and support of the CDC. We have been prepared for patients with serious communicable diseases for many, many years. And notably in 2014, we were asked by the U.S. State Department and federal government to care for 4 individuals with Ebola virus disease, 3 of which were evacuated from West Africa, and 1 of which was a domestic case. That domestic case really opened the eyes of all of us in healthcare, in addition to our federal partners, that we needed to prepare U.S. healthcare systems better for novel infectious diseases such as Ebola, Marburg, and things like the Andes virus. Following that outbreak, the federal government, HHS, and specifically ASPR, tapped 3 hospitals, Emory University Hospital, University of Nebraska Medical Center, and Bellevue Hospital, the 3 civilian facilities that cared for patients with Ebola virus disease successfully and returned them home to their families, to better prepare healthcare systems in the United States to prevent the domestic outbreaks such as what we had in Texas in 2014. We, since that time, have had the fortune of being continuously funded by ASPR to reach out to and develop 13 federally designated biocontainment units, or what we now call high-level isolation units, across the United States to make sure that every region of the U.S. has one of these facilities. In addition, NETEC, with its respect partners, such as the Emory Serious Communicable Diseases Unit, work with local, regional, and national groups, healthcare systems, from frontline hospitals to tertiary care hospitals, to make sure that we are all prepared, all of our healthcare workers are prepared to recognize, identify, isolate, and inform when there is a concern for a serious communicable diseases, and protect our healthcare workers so that we can effectively and safely care for individuals with these novel infections. We are proud that the system came together, the National Special Pathogen System of Care that we've been developing since 2023. When we learned of the potential transfer of patients from the Canary Islands, all 13 biocontainment units across the country, coordinated by NETEC, responded with readiness postures, preparedness, and all of us were ready to receive a patient at notice. Emory was fortunate to be the one called upon today to receive these two individuals, and we can say very securely that our system worked, our preparedness worked, and most importantly, my teammates performed very, very well. At this point, I will turn it over to my colleague from the CDC, David Fitter, to give additional comments.
Excellent. Thank you all. And good evening. My name is David Fitter. I'm a physician with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and I'm the incident manager of the hantavirus response. I also serve as the director of the Division of Global Migration Health at CDC. I want to start by saying we understand that this is an uncertain and stressful time for the passengers. They've gone through quite a bit, and we're trying to help them. And this is a priority for us. But the big priorities for us are the safe and healthy return of the passengers, but also safe and healthy American communities. And this is what we're working towards. As Dr. Mehta said, it's the coordination that we have put together that has been so important with this. We are prepared to do this, and we are working in both the federal, the state, the local level, and also with private partners to move forward to ensure that we're protecting the Americans, but we're also assisting the passengers that have gone through this time. CDC is next door. This is helpful for the relationship with Emory. It is a fantastic facility, and we were able to work very closely with them as we were able to move quickly through this very dynamic and evolving situation. What I also want to say is hantavirus is a known virus. It is a known pathogen. And that helps us. We know what we're doing, and we know how we're responding. The system worked. We moved quickly. We identified the passengers. We identified a way to get them back. This is a coordination across the federal government with Department of State, with ASPR, with DHS, but more importantly, this is across state and local health authorities, as well as the hospitals like Emory. I'll say it again. I really want to get this across. The safety and health of the passengers and the safety and health of the American communities is primary to us. What have we been doing? As soon as we heard about this, we reached out to colleagues. We've been in contact with the World Health Organization. We've been in contact with the other countries that have been involved with this outbreak to ensure that we were coordinated in our approach, that we understood the situation and we were able to assist the people on the ship. We had a team that we sent out to the Canary Islands to greet the passengers as soon as they came off the ship. And this was in coordination with the State Department, with the government of Spain, with WHO, and with a lot of international partners. We were then able to help get the passengers onto the plane to help bring them back to the United States. And we did that. That was a success. We were able to bring them back. As Dr. Mehta said, we did an initial assessment. There was someone that was found to have some symptoms that were consistent with hantavirus, but these are very broad symptoms, and we wanted to do a very conservative effort. And that's why we wanted to make sure that we brought them back and tested them appropriately here in the United States. we will be here. We will continue to communicate about what's going on, and we appreciate everybody. All the questions that are coming in, we want to make sure that they are answered. And now what's the next step? We want to make sure that we're doing the approach with the passengers. We want to make sure that we're doing the approach with the jurisdictions as well. So we're assessing them. We are also coordinating between the passengers and the jurisdictions about what the next steps will be. In the same time, we want to make sure that we're sharing information with the jurisdictions and also with the American public about what's going on. To the individuals that return today and their families, we are focused on delivering safe, respectful care and transparent communication. To the American public, we want you to know that we are here to protect your health and to ensure American communities remain healthy and safe. I do want to reiterate this point. The system worked. We had prepared for this, and we activated the system, and we did it quickly, responsibly, and successfully. So thank you very much.
We've been listening to a news conference there at Emory University, and as they mentioned, they are literally across the street from the Centers for Disease Control. We've heard from some of the leading infectious disease experts at both the CDC and Emory. Dr. Kavita Patel is here with us to talk through what we heard, and not a lot of specifics about the condition of the one patient who's symptomatic, but the CDC doctor did say that he or she had broad symptoms.
Right. So this is the patient in Atlanta that has a significant other with them. The patient has symptoms, but so far been tested negative, and it could be another virus. These symptoms of early hantavirus look like a flu. So it could be something else, Tom, entirely, but you don't want to take that chance. So being closely monitored and having labs drawn as well.
And the Emory physician did make a point that they have been very aware of the Andes variant of the hantavirus for a long time, preparing for this for years. Right. But there really is no medicinal treatment, right? You just have to support them in terms of their breathing and their fluids.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. That's why you see a high mortality rate when we do see these infections progress. There is no treatment. We call it supportive therapy, but nothing that's an FDA-approved treatment that we can offer. No vaccine, and there's a vaccine in development, but not even it's in animals only, not humans.
Yeah. All right, we'll continue listening for any new developments in terms of the status of the patients and what they're going to be doing going forward. Doctor, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Also from us, we're going to be coming right back with more news of the day, and there's a lot of it. We'll be right back. To our original now, in-depth reporting on a topic that everybody's talking about, and tonight it's pickleball. And the star, fresh off a winning weekend at the league's championships in California yesterday, we're talking about Anna Leigh Waters, who's been dominating now for years before most of us even heard about pickleball. She started before she was even a teenager, and now she's widely considered to be the GOAT. NBC's Gotti Schwartz has her story.
A 19-year-old sensation now smashing the competition in the fastest growing sport in the world. Meet Anna Leigh Waters, the pickleball star, widely considered the greatest of all time in a still young but up-and-coming game. She's the most decorated pickleball player ever with 194 gold medals.
I don't see anyone being really close to her anytime soon.
Adding more hardware to her collection at this weekend's Professional Pickleball Association, or PPA, Championships.
Anna Bright and Anna Leigh Waters are champions of the PPA Finals.
A familiar feeling for Waters, who's been playing with the pros since she was 12 years old. She picked up the paddle for the first time when she and her family had to evacuate their Florida home and temporarily moved to Pennsylvania after Hurricane Irma.
We were hooked, and we played 2 to 3 times every day.
Her mom actually quit her job as a lawyer to play professionally, eventually becoming the #1 ranked female singles player in the country. And when her doubles partner dropped out before a tournament in 2019, she asked her daughter, a middle schooler at the time, to step in.
The coolest thing in my life, I think, was getting to play with her, getting to sort of like be friends and teammates.
But it wasn't all fun and games.
I really, when I was younger, didn't really understand it. A lot of people were treating me poorly on the court or would get pretty upset, call me names, whatever. But
Now that I'm older, I realize, the feelings they must have been going through, like losing to a 12-year-old.
Flash forward to now, she's getting recognized by some of the biggest names in sports, like tennis legend Andre Agassi.
She's one of the great competitors I've ever seen sports, period.
And yeah, even Agassi trading in his racket for a paddle, making his professional pickleball debut alongside Waters at last year's U.S. Open. A surreal moment for her mom turned coach.
I had a cardboard cutout of Andre in my basement, like when I was growing up, like playing junior tennis. Like he was an idol of mine. So like now she's like hanging out with Andre and Steffi.
Waters wins, coming on and off the court, recently signing a deal with Nike. PPA CEO Connor Perdot saying she's been great for the game.
Having Annalie is a dream come true, really.
He says when the league started in 2019, Waters took home $1,000 after winning a gold medal. And this year, he says she's going to take home $2.5 million. And she shows no signs of slowing down.
I feel like sometimes I've lived a full life, and I'm only 19. A goal of mine is just to stay on top as long as possible, however long that may be.
Okay, coolest story of the day there, buddy. And by the way, I guess she's paid for college right now with $2.5 million last year. Pickleball has got this tremendous growth, but we won't see it played at the LA Olympics, right?
Yeah, not LA 2028, maybe Brisbane 2032 when Annalie Waters is going to be like 25 years old. But
right.
First, pickleball has to go super international. They have to have a governing body that will mesh with the IOC. But I'll tell you, Tom, pickleball may not be on the official Olympic roster, but pickleball will be played all over LA when the Olympics are here. And I know that may not count in other places, but it has become very popular throughout the country. It is super popular in Hollywood. It is the game that all the celebrities are playing. Just Selena Gomez, Larry David, Leonardo DiCaprio, the Kardashians. So you can imagine that there will be some very high-level Olympic parties when they're all here in Los Angeles, and they're all going to be saying, hey, you know what would make a great Olympic sport? Pickleball.
Yeah,
so
there you go.
We'll see what happens in Australia. Tom?
So do you play? And by the way, if the average age is about 40, no surprise a teenager is the GOAT, right?
Yeah, well, it's so funny that we say that she's a coach. She is like a storied veteran. Remember, 7 years ago, most people didn't even know that pickleball was a thing. I play a little bit on our block. We block out some stuff, but it's much easier on the knees than normal tennis. You can imagine the longevity that she's got in her career.
Oh, great story. As always, Gotti. Thanks, buddy. That is, by the way, you can watch more of Gotti on Stay Tuned Now every night and again every weekend at 8 o'clock right here on NBC News Now. So that's a wrap for us at this hour, but the news continues right now. As promised, top of the hour on News Now, we start with that deadly rodent virus. Here in the United States now, more than a dozen Americans evacuated from a cruise ship, now in quarantine. We're going to take you live to Omaha, where 2 of the passengers are now, and the new updates we just got in from doctors in Atlanta. Also new at this hour, we'll take you near a fast-moving wildfire in the Florida Everglades. The fire burning thousands of acres. Our team got an up-close look. And then President Trump's new warning to Iran after he rejected their latest deal to end the war.
I would say the ceasefire is on massive life support.
Why the pressure's ahead as his trip to China is now about to begin. Plus, new video tonight after a person died running onto a runway in Denver, how the airport there is responding to alleged security lapses, and scenes from an Italian courtroom. What we are just now learning about the case against a Texas man accused of murdering his pregnant wife before he escaped overseas. That coming up later in the newscast. Good day, happy Monday. I'm Tom Costello in for Hallie, and in just the last few minutes, we did hear from doctors at the Emory University Hospital where 2 passengers from that cruise ship at the center of the deadly rodent virus outbreak are being monitored and treated. And right now, the doctors say the public's safety is their biggest priority. Here's that.
I do want to reiterate this point. The system worked. We have prepared for this, and we activated the system, and we did it quickly, responsibly, and successfully.
So here's the video of some of the 18 passengers that were evacuated to medical centers in Atlanta and in Nebraska, covered head to toe in protective suits there. Doctors at the National Quarantine Unit in Nebraska say 16 of the passengers are under observation there for the time being. One of those patients has tested positive for the hantavirus, so that person is in a biocontainment unit. 2 others were taken to a medical center there in Atlanta at Emory. One of the American patients in Nebraska posted this on social media today, saying, "I'm okay, I'm feeling well." He says the flight over was smooth, his words. Meanwhile, overseas, medical crews helped evacuate dozens of other passengers who were still left on the boat. And that's what you're seeing right there, coming off the ship. Just before that got underway, we heard from the captain of the ship, who sent a message of appreciation to his crew and to his passengers.
The past few weeks have been extremely challenging to us all, as I'm sure you know. What touched me the most, what moved me the most, was your patience, your discipline, and also kindness.
So Dr. Kavita Patel is on standby for our medical questions, and Camila Bernal is in Nebraska, where some of those passengers are quarantining. Camila, let's start with you in Omaha. What do the next few days look like for the people at that medical center there?
Yeah, Tom. So officials here said they were going to allow the passengers to rest, and then they were going to continue their assessments. And that includes at least daily temperature checks and trying to get to the bottom of when their last exposure was, because that is going to help them decide if they have to stay here or how long. Those are exactly my questions. Will people be forced to stay here? And officials here said no. Eventually, it will be up to the passengers to decide whether they want to quarantine here and have the resources of the university and of this center, or if they want to go back to their home states. And if they do, officials here also saying that the risk to the public is low. Take a listen.
Let me be crystal clear. The risk of hantavirus to the general public remains very, very low.
And another question I asked was, why not give everybody a PCR test? And what I was told is that per CDC guidelines, only people with symptoms would be tested. And so only the people in the biocontainment unit are going to be tested. And we do not have those results yet, but those plans could change, Tom.
So, Camilla, New Hampshire state health authorities said today that 2 residents of that state were also on the ship. What do we know about how many states at this point are having to monitor the situation?
Yeah, so there are sort of 3 different buckets here. The first being people who were on this repatriation flight. And we know New Hampshire, we know California, New York, Utah, and North Carolina have people who were on that flight and are looking into all of this. The other part of it is passengers that already got off the boat and are already in those states. And those states essentially saying that those passengers are self-monitoring and will eventually report if they have any symptoms. And then finally, there are states that are also monitoring exposure. So people that were maybe on a flight with someone that was on that ship, and all of that is being looked at by the states around the country. Tom?
Okay, Camilla Bernal in Omaha. Camilla, thank you. Let's turn now to Dr. Kavita Patel for more analysis here on the takeaways. I got a question, and I've been wondering this for a couple of days. The medical professionals say we have a good feeling for the Andes variant, but we don't have a lot of conclusive data to pull from. Right. They believe it is required that you have close contact in order to spread the virus, but they're not really sure, right? So where does this go in terms of testing people who may be asymptomatic?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And I thought it was interesting Camilla got to the point of, are they actually taking tests? And the doctors left room for those quarantined individuals, no symptoms so far, that they aren't doing these kind of baseline testing. I would imagine that before they put them on flights to go home, if that's what they indeed choose to do, that there would need to be some assurances, including potentially at least a negative set of not just a PCR, but we usually do a PCR and an ELISA. To your point about experience with this, a lot of it is from journals. This Andes strain is not something that we see. Gene Hackman's wife passed away from hantavirus. It wasn't this strain. Different strain. So we don't have a lot of experience with this strain.
And we do have a lot of experience with that strain that Gene Hackman's wife died from.
Correct.
That's there in New Mexico, Arizona, Colorado.
Right.
This is quite literally from South America.
Right.
So if we don't know for sure how long the incubation period is, could be 6 weeks, then do we really need to be putting people locked up in a biocontainment unit for 6 weeks.
No, I think putting them in a biocontainment unit, remember, that's a hospital, almost ICU level kind of monitoring. That's a very different type of monitoring. I think what we're talking about is a quarantine unit. It brings back memories from COVID when we talked about what a quarantine is, but it's essentially just making sure that they don't have close contact with other individuals that could put those individuals at risk. So quarantine means no reason to believe that you have that illness, but you could potentially develop illness symptoms and then expose people, which is why you have to remain quarantined.
Yeah, it's got a lot of people on edge. Doctor, thank you.
Thank you.
Information is power. Appreciate it. To some other breaking news, this time out of France, we are learning authorities in Paris foiled a planned terrorist attack on a museum there. France's anti-terrorism police tell us law enforcement took a 27-year-old man from Tunisia into custody last week. He's now charged with conspiracy to commit a terrorist attack. A source close to the investigation says the attack targeted the Jewish community and a Paris museum, although they did not specify which museum. But French newspaper Le Monde reports he was planning to attack the Louvre, which sees tens of thousands of visitors a day, many of them, of course, American. NBC's Tom Winter is joining us now. He's covering law enforcement, as always. Tom, what else are you learning about what this individual was allegedly planning, and how did the authorities catch him?
Yeah, Tom, so not a ton of details coming in from French authorities so far. The basics of what we know, as you mentioned, taken into custody, this 27-year-old from Tunisia. Northern Africa has been a little bit of a kind of a jumping off point for potential terrorists into France. Several of the attacks there have a nexus from people from some of the communities. You can add on top of that the Ariana Grande concert and some other incidents. And there is a connection between the two places that we've seen in the past. Obviously, a very, very small minority of the individuals that come from that country, from those countries rather, into Europe have been a concern for authorities. This individual was. The investigation began in earnest last Wednesday, we are told, and after that there was an indictment that was filed, and this individual, according to people familiar with the matter, is being held pending the outcome of this case. As you said, not confirmed by NBC News, but the Louvre, which has approximately 9 million visitors each year, that the Louvre was potentially an intended target here. There are some reports in French newspapers about planning and some of the details of the plot. All in all, this looks very similar to what we've seen over the past several months. This individual had desires potentially to travel to ISIS territory. This appears to be an inspired plot. So, Tom, really, it ticks off all the boxes of what we've seen throughout Europe over the past several weeks, and frankly, here in the United States, dating back to last fall, in what's being called the Pumpkin Plot by authorities here. A number of individuals who wanted to conduct attacks in the Detroit area, as well as individuals in New Jersey and in out west in Washington State that wanted to travel to ISIS territory. So it just kind of paints the constant terror threat that it seems that multiple continents are facing now, Tom.
Okay, NBC's Tom Winter, thank you very much. Right now, fire crews are rushing to stop a fast-moving wildfire. It's in the Florida Everglades, and already it's burned through more than 11,000 acres. So there it is. It looks like a wall of fire. Florida's Forest Service says it's a 50% contained fire after breaking out yesterday. Police say the flames are not a major threat yet, but it's causing some air quality concerns, and they warn people to avoid the area completely. We want to bring in NBC's Jesse Kirsch for more. Jesse, how worried are fire commanders right now about this wildfire's proximity to homes?
Yeah, well, what I can tell you, Tom, is it's burning behind us in the Everglades. We are just outside of the Everglades, an area known for having a lot of greenery, a lot of water, a lot of fuel for a wildfire. And that is, but also important to note, not a population center. And I want to just stress, I'm wearing the mask right now because we were in there earlier. And as often happens with wildfire, you have the wind that can change the direction of a wildfire. And what happened was we were probably, I'd say, about a mile that way in the park. And we were right near the fire line. We were there with the firefighters. It was kind of a staging area for some of their vehicles. We could see the chopper dropping water from overhead. And then the wind was changing direction. The flames were kicking up. And next thing you know, this plume of smoke, this cloud of smoke, was moving overhead. We started to see ash falling from the sky, and so we got in our vehicles and got out of there. So we've retreated to this area. And as we were moving out, we saw multiple fire officials racing in, multiple fire trucks, fire engines making their way into the area. So clearly they were focused that much more on that area as that unfolded. We're a good ways back now. The smoke has also died down quite a bit from even just about 30 minutes ago, but we can still smell the smoke in the air. And obviously this is not the kind of stuff you want to be breathing in. And officials have made a point of saying that even if the fire is not near you, the smoke can travel for miles, and that can be something that is hazardous to breathe in. So if you are smelling that smoke, they're telling people to stay inside, keep the windows shut, which is a common refrain we hear in situations like this. The fire, again, is not near population centers. It has been moving northwest, away from Miami, away from Fort Lauderdale, away from these population centers into the Everglades, but it has also exploded in size, gone from 5 to 7 to now more than 11,000 acres, but 50% containment, and we know the firefighters are keeping an eye on it, Tom.
Yeah, you're absolutely smart to wear that mask. Jesse, thanks very much. Back here in Washington now, President Trump says the U.S. ceasefire with Iran is on life support. His words there. The president has rejected Iran's latest offer, which Iranian state media says includes demands for the U.S. to pay Iran reparations. Tehran also wants the U.S. and allies to unfreeze billions of dollars in Iranian assets. And the regime wants recognition of its control over the Strait of Hormuz. President Trump put it bluntly that none of it sounds like it's a starting point to him.
They come back and they want to negotiate, and they give us it's a stupid proposal. I would say the ceasefire is on massive life support, where the doctor walks in and says, "Sir, your loved one has approximately a 1% chance of living."
But the president faces the political reality here of rising gas prices. Look at this. National average now, $4.52 a gallon. And President Trump floated a possible suspension of the federal gas tax. We should note that would have consequences. The tax is actually used to build, fix, and maintain highways and bridges. Suspending that tax would not bring prices back to pre-war prices. Mr. Trump also needs congressional approval to sign off on the plan. NBC's Keir Simmons is in Doha, Qatar. And Keir, when you talk with various government reps there in the Gulf, do they think that the Iranians are negotiating in good faith here? And do they think the Americans are?
Well, they think there's a distance, a huge distance between the two sides. That's for certain. There are different governments in this region that have different ways of looking at this. But certainly one aspect of the whole thing is that where I am now, Qatar and a number of other countries here really rely on the Strait of Hormuz, and they are very concerned that one of the proposals in the Iranian counter-proposal that President Trump was talking about there, they're very concerned that one of the ideas there from the Iranians is that they should have sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz. There are also state media reports, Iranian state media reports, that they expect to have large amounts of frozen funds released, and I'm talking about billions of dollars are held, for example, here in Qatar, that ostensibly belong to the Iranians but have been held for many years. So you can see why President Trump is not impressed. And then we did have the Prime Minister of Israel over the weekend giving his own interview saying that the war isn't over if they haven't solved the nuclear issue, the way that Iran the uranium that Iran has. So there are so many issues here. It's so complex.
Yeah. Let's talk about the state of the strait, if you will. The CEO of Saudi Arabia's state-owned oil and gas company says, quote, normalization of prices would not return until well into 2027 if the strait's opening is delayed by more than a few more weeks. Does Iran have any intention of bringing the world back to a pre-war status quo in the strait?
No, is the answer to that. When you say Iran, I mean, obviously, remember there are different factions in Iran, so there are some that are more interested in negotiating than others, but certainly the Iranians collectively are indicating that they think that they have leverage and that the strait provides them with leverage. To your point about the economic impact here, I think there's an interesting aspect to all of this, and that is that we're in a kind of an economic game of chicken where the Iranian economy is in crisis, but the world economy is facing a crisis. Which comes first? And again, with these Gulf countries, for example, they face serious consequences if this continues for weeks and months. And at the same time, there is a whole issue for the airline industry, as you know very well yourself, Tom, in terms of fuel. So there are all of these different aspects kind of competing with each other and raising the question, at what moment will either side blink? Will they come to a negotiation given those extraordinary risks?
Yeah. Keir Simmons in Doha, thank you very much. The president has suggested for months that the Iran war should wrap up before his visit to China. Well, that visit is actually next week, and Mr. Trump will meet with China's Xi Jinping, and Iran will likely play large in conversations.
I have a great relationship with President Xi, and I think you can see that with the fact that in Hormuz, they get a big percentage, 40% of their oil from Hormuz. There's been no ships coming in, no nasty ships coming in that we end up in skirmishes with. He'd like to see it get done.
Well, big business will also be on the agenda at the meeting. Look at this. The CEOs from all the companies you see on the screen there will be in attendance. Among the biggest companies, Apple, Boeing, Goldman Sachs, Meta, and of course, Tesla, SpaceX CEO Elon Musk, the man once in charge of DOGE, the effort last year to cut government spending. NBC's Ryan Nobles is at the White House for us. Ryan, is that a sign that the president wants this to be all about business, this trip to China?
There's no doubt, Tom, that the economy will be front and center for the president on this visit to China. He wants to continue the business relationship between the two countries that at times has been strained. He has complained about the trade imbalance often between China and the United States, but at the same time wants to open up the Chinese market to all these different American companies and these CEOs that both sell goods to the Chinese, but also manufacture goods in China, which are then sold back here to the United States. So there has been a back and forth over tariffs and taxes and trade between the two countries. President Trump would like this to be the focus of this meeting, but there are obviously so many other issues going around the world that directly impact China, that the United States is at the forefront of, Iran being the best example. So it's clear that this won't be the only thing that they talk about during this, what could be a historic visit, Tom.
Okay, well, among the other things could be Taiwan, right? China has made it very clear it believes it should have possession of Taiwan. You were with the president today. Does he sound at all interested in talking Taiwan with Xi?
Well, in a question from me, Tom, the president said directly that he expects President Xi to talk more about Taiwan than he will talk about Taiwan. But that being said, he knows it is an issue that will come up. The sovereignty of Taiwan, their ability to operate as a free country, even though they're not completely independent of China, is something that President Xi is obsessed with. And one of the reasons that China's been able to be held at bay is because the United States supplies Taiwan with weapons. And that's something that President Trump hasn't been completely comfortable with. And I asked him about that today. Take a listen.
There's a lot of support for Taiwan from Japan and from countries from that area.
Do you think we should still be selling them weapons? The United States should
Well, I'm going to have that discussion with President Xi. President Xi would like us not to, and I'll have that discussion.
Notably there, Tom, the president did not say that the United States will or will not continue to sell weapons. But keep in mind, this is something that's been appropriated by the United States Congress. It is essentially law. So if the president were to stop the sale of weapons, which has been slowed down quite a bit, that would be in a direct opposition to what congressional leaders have asked him to do. So this is a significant thing that the president and the leaders of China will be talking about this week.
And bipartisan support in Congress as well. Ryan Nobles, thank you very much. It will surely be a very busy week. Be sure to tune in all week. Tom Yamas will be anchoring NBC Nightly News and Top Story all week live from Beijing for this U.S.-China summit. We want to get to some breaking news out of California. The mayor of a small town just outside of L.A. facing federal charges now for acting as an illegal Chinese agent. The 58-year-old mayor will plead guilty for working at the behest of the Chinese government officials. She is accused of promoting propaganda that included dismissing alleged forced labor camps in her country. And her alleged co-conspirator is on a 20-month sentence, and she faces up to 10 years in prison. All right, we are tracking breaking news out of Massachusetts at this hour. A man in custody after opening fire on a busy street. Our Boston station just received this video, and we want to warn you, the video is disturbing. So you hear those loud pops. It sounds like gunfire, and you see a man believed to be the suspect carrying a rifle. And there's some of the damage seen on the ground, what appears to be a bullet hole through the windshield of a postal truck. NBC Sam Brock joining us now. Sam, I understand that you just got new video of the suspect, and talk us through that.
Yeah, a pretty chilling account, Tom, of what happened earlier today. According to law enforcement, this all unfolded about 1:30 in Cambridge, Massachusetts, obviously well known for its high-profile colleges, including Harvard University. This is the new video. You can see just almost from a ground-level perspective, several rounds being fired here. That is a very similar visual to what we saw from that earlier video shot from 7 or 8 or 9 floors up of an individual that is wearing shorts and a black hood and dark clothing, holding a long gun or a rifle, and literally walking down the street and just firing off rounds of ammunition. We obviously can't see what he is firing at. There is a portion there you see him almost stop for a second, where if you slow it down, it almost looks like he's being grazed by something. The hat on the top of his head moves slightly. I did speak with, or I should say, NBC Boston spoke with several witnesses earlier today who described a scenario where people were, Tom, fleeing their cars, turning around. That's the other video, obviously, turning around and trying to get away from this person. One man said at one point the shooter was about 25 feet away from him, and he ran inside of his car. He was outside and ducked behind the dashboard. That guy's name is Brandon. His wife later accompanied him to the scene. They were both visibly shaken up. Here is what he told NBC Boston. That's a shot of them just embracing in the aftermath of what happened. Take a listen.
My wife just drove up from the house about an hour and a half away.
What does it mean to see her after what you went through today?
As long as she's good, I'm good. But I hate seeing her worried. Takes it out of me.
Tom, we are awaiting an update from Massachusetts State Police and Cambridge Police. That was supposed to happen about an hour and a half ago, but obviously still has not transpired. But to this point, Massachusetts State Police only saying that they didn't have any specific information regarding what led up to this shooting or the circumstances involved. 2 people initially were potentially injured. That's according to Harvard University's police department. And then later MSP, the Massachusetts State Police, came out and said at least 1 person was being treated for a gunshot wound. Not clear who that is, if it's a suspect or otherwise. Tom.
So, Sam, just looking at the video, I mean, it looks like it was somebody returning fire, was a police officer returning fire. And then the other observation I had, it looks like it was a semi-automatic weapon, but that's a layman's observation.
Indeed. I can't speak to the nature of the firearm, but the witnesses did say that there was gunfire exchange. Obviously, he's shooting at someone, and the suspect in this case sort of rocks back for a second. People on the ground said that he was exchanging gunfire with police. There are other non-verified videos that are out there showing him on the ground after he has been shot, or appears to be shot, and there was a lot of blood on that sidewalk. So that would seem to fit the perceived chronology of what happened, but again, we're waiting for details from police.
Okay, and this happened on the Cambridge side, and to our knowledge, nobody killed, but people injured.
That is all correct.
NBC Sam Brock watching it all. Sam, thank you very much. All right, now to the deadly collision at Denver International Airport and new surveillance video of the incident obtained by NBC News. But before we show that to you, we want to also warn you this is disturbing as well. You can see a person walking onto the runway in the footage here with the Frontier Airlines plane just seconds from taking off. And we're stopping the video right there before the collision. We know that the person on the runway was killed. 5 on board went to the hospital. Investigators are trying to figure out who that person was and why and how he or she was on the runway at 11:19 p.m. Videos from on board show the scary moment of the impact, the right side engine catching fire, passengers screaming. Here's what the pilot said to air traffic control.
We just hit somebody. We have an engine fire.
It does appear to be human remains on the runway.
So to give you a sense of where this happened, Denver International has the largest airport footprint in North America. It covers an area that's about 1.5 to 2 times the size of Manhattan and twice the size of Chicago O'Hare. Having been on those runways, I can tell you that I was there when they were first laid back in the 90s and again last year. It is a massive footprint. NBC's Liz Kreutz. has been at the airport following the story. Liz, that's a remote section of the airport. Do we know how and this person managed to get over the barbed wire fence?
Yeah, Tom, there's so many questions still. I was just there, as you mentioned. We just returned from Denver, where we were able to see just how massive this airport is and the 36 miles of barbed wire fencing that surrounds the perimeter. It's about 10 to 12 feet tall, barbed wire at the top. That is all per TSA regulations. But ultimately, it is something that if you have a will, there would be a way to get over it. As we saw in this case, we did ourselves walk up to that fence. There's security that drives around, but ultimately we talked about it, 11 p.m. at night, it's dark, it's massive. Even if there was an alert, it would take a while for the security crews to potentially locate this person, and we all know this happened within just a matter of minutes. Denver International, they put out a statement saying that they are going to perform an incident analysis in response to what happened, and that is going to include looking into their perimeter security program, Tom.
Well, a couple of other questions for you. First of all, when you look at the video from inside the cabin, people are trying to evacuate, and typically flight attendants don't want people evacuating when there's an engine fire, right? They want the fire department on the scene first to put out the fire, because otherwise people could slide down into that kind of a danger zone, because typically an engine fire is not going to catch the whole plane on fire, typically. But then on top of that, you see a lot of these people coming down the slide, and they are carrying their suitcases, their belongings.
Yeah, Tom, so to kind of hit on both of those points, some passengers were frustrated by the delay in getting off. They said that they felt that they were being held on the aircraft for several minutes while smoke filled the cabin, and that it led to chaos with people yelling, "Let us off, let us off." Eventually, everybody was able to get off safely. People grabbed suitcases, which is a blatant violation of FAA regulations. And as one flight attendant told us, this could lead to fines if the NTSB decides to investigate.
Yeah, so, the word is, if you, God forbid, you're in an emergency, don't take your carry-on. Liz Kreutz, thanks very much. Coming up from us, a Texas man accused of strangling his pregnant wife fled to Italy. What he told a judge in Italy today. Plus, the new investigation after a house exploded in Illinois. We've got that video. We're back now to the case of a Texas man accused of killing his pregnant wife and escaping to Italy just weeks before his murder trial was set to start. In an Italian courtroom today, Lee Gilly asked a judge there for protection against being brought back to the United States. He claims he was wrongly blamed for her murder and then fled to avoid facing the death penalty back at home. Court documents show that Gilly cut off his ankle monitor while out on bail and traveled to Italy under a fake name. He was arrested after showing a fake Belgian passport to Italian authorities. NBC's Priscilla Thompson joins us now. So Priscilla, how was he able to escape, and what are the next steps now for his case in Italy and also here in the United States?
Yeah, Tom, so court documents show that on May 1st, Gilly cut off his ankle monitor and then he fled. He hopped on a Air Canada flight that stopped through Canada before landing in Milan. And when he arrived in Milan, authorities recognized that his passports and identification were forged. And Gilly essentially came clean and explained who he was obviously taken into custody. We know that he was in court today, where we heard him tell the judge that he did not want to be extradited. He said that he fled because he feared that he was going to be killed. And he also professed his innocence. And he also said in court today, quote, "I chose Europe because of its due process guarantees and Italy because there is strong public opposition to the death penalty." And of course, that is something that he very well could be facing here in Texas, as he was expected to go to trial later this month for killing his pregnant wife. Police saying that he strangled her back in October of 2024. Now, the Harris County District Attorney's Office had not said whether or not they would be seeking the death penalty, but it is certainly a possibility in a case like this. Now, as for what is sort of going to happen next, his attorney has said that at this point they're waiting for notice from the U.S. that they are going to formally seek that extradition, which is almost certain to come.
Yeah, so Gilly is also making the argument that there's a media campaign against him here in the United States, preventing him from getting a fair trial. And then I understand a judge in Texas issued a gag order on the case just days ago. So where does that leave what can and can't be said about this case publicly?
Yeah, so that judge issued the gag order on Friday, saying that it was to ensure that he did get a fair trial and that the jury pool wasn't tainted by all of, especially with this new media coverage as he has fled the state. And so anyone connected to this case, that goes for attorneys, staff of attorneys and investigators, anyone connected to this case cannot talk about the character or credibility or reputation of any party or witness, what a party or witness is expected to testify about, and a whole host of other things that they are prohibiting. Tom?
But he was accused of murder, yet he was out before his trial with an ankle bracelet.
Yes, he was out on bail since October of 2024, basically $1 million bail. And I will say the family is reacting to this, and friends of the victim, Krista. And so we heard them, who were obviously not happy about the fact that he had been out on bail. And now to see this happen, very disappointed, especially with this past weekend being Mother's Day. And we know that Krista was, according to police, about 8 weeks pregnant when she was killed. And she also has 2 other young children. Tom.
Priscilla Thompson, thank you very much. Over now to the 5 things our team thinks you may want to know about on this Monday. Number 1, the family of a man killed in last year's shooting at Florida State University is suing OpenAI. Now, they say the suspect used instructions given to him by their product, ChatGPT. The suit claims the tech company failed to effectively detect threats in conversations with the alleged shooter. A spokesperson for OpenAI calls the shooting a tragedy, but says the company is not responsible. Number 2, the man accused of attempting to assassinate President Trump at the White House Correspondents' Dinner pleaded not guilty in federal court today. 31-year-old Cole Allen is charged with attempted assassination, assaulting a federal officer with a deadly weapon, and 2 gun counts. He faces up to life in prison if convicted. Number 3, one person is in custody after a shooting and a house fire in Illinois. Police were investigating in the area when somebody inside a home started firing at officers. Soon after that, the home suddenly exploded. The cause of that blast unclear. The suspect is in the hospital. 1 officer was treated for minor injuries. Number 4, take a look at this massive fire at a recycling plant in North Dakota. Multiple fire departments and fire engines were brought in to fight the flames. Thankfully, nobody injured. Exactly what caused that big fire is still not clear. Number 5, listen up, principals and teachers. Recess is crucial to good health and good grades for children. That according to new guidelines by the American Academy of Pediatrics. It's the first update in 13 years. The group says recess is a necessary break that improves kids' emotional, social, and physical development. The change comes after schools across the country have been cutting back on recess for several years now. Lots more ahead. Another tech giant has been roped into the high-stakes Elon Musk OpenAI trial. What Microsoft's CEO was pressed on the stand. And later, how an unwanted guest was chased out of a Tennessee hotel. Yeah, here he comes. He's coming. He's coming. He didn't pay his bills. Attorneys for Elon Musk just rested their case in a big tech trial pitting billionaire against billionaire after one of OpenAI's founders testified about how he played a key role in the dramatic firing of his fellow co-founder Sam Altman back in 2023. Now, OpenAI exec Ilya Sutskever told a jury that Altman had a, quote, pattern of lying, undermining his execs and pinning them against, well, one against the other at the time. Now, you'll remember that Elon Musk says this whole trial is about betrayal by OpenAI's co-founder and CEO Sam Altman. Musk says he invested in OpenAI in its early days with the intention of being a non-profit research center. He accuses Altman of using that money to make themselves rich by making OpenAI for profit. Now, we heard from the head of Microsoft earlier who said Musk never brought up any concerns that Microsoft's investments in OpenAI were in violation of any particular terms. Musk has named Microsoft as a defendant in this trial as well. NBC's Brian Chung has been following all the twists and turns here. Brian, both of these execs talked about a pretty intense moment in OpenAI's history, right? When the company's board pushed Sam out briefly. Why is that important to the Musk case here?
Yeah, Tom, that was in 2023, and as we know, Sam Altman was very quickly reinstated as the CEO of OpenAI. But what Elon Musk is trying to do in his lawsuit against Sam Altman is do a little bit of character assassination to paint the picture of Sam Altman as someone that is unreliable and also someone that double-crossed Elon Musk when Elon committed $38 million to what he thought was going to be standing up OpenAI as a nonprofit. As we know, that company changed the structure so that now there's a very substantial for-profit arm of that company, although the nonprofit still exists at the top. And so Ilya Sutskever, who was a very key founding member of OpenAI, who was one of the people that was essentially uprooted when Sam Altman returned to OpenAI, he said and testified in court today that Sam Altman was, quote, consistently not candid, quote, consistent pattern of lying. And they also tried to get Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, to share what he knew about the internal operations of OpenAI as well. He basically denied and said he let OpenAI do their own due diligence to figure out what to do with Sam. But again, Sam Altman himself, Tom, expected to testify tomorrow. If not Wednesday, the jury will take over and begin deliberations either Thursday or Monday next week.
You know, Brian, I'm just wondering, for a jury, for example, let's be honest, neither Elon Musk nor Sam Altman has a sterling reputation as it comes to candor, to honesty.
Yeah, and this was the challenge in selecting the jury members in the first place. Those 9 were often quizzed on whether or not they had certain feelings or predispositions about Elon Musk and or Sam Altman. But again, we'll have to see what they decide. The judge actually has the final say in this, not the jury.
Brian Chung on the story. Brian, thank you. Coming up from us, inside Nike's race to get back to the top, the company's CEO goes one-on-one with Craig Melvin as part of our brand new series. Plus, the business bringing sheer joy to people and aren't fans of yard work. Now, this is going to be great. Here it comes. We're back, and you know that iconic swoosh, Nike, one of the most prominent brands around the world, but its stock has taken a beating over the last few years with sales slumping. One of the footwear giant's former top execs came out of retirement and now works to revive the company. He's CEO now, and he tells Today co-anchor Craig Melvin that the company is in reset mode and he's trying to set the business up for the next 4 decades. Here's more of that exclusive interview, part of NBC News' Business in America series.
From podiums to playgrounds, Nike is one of the most recognized brands on the planet.
Just like you at the U.S. Open. Very good, Serena Williams.
An athletic empire worth more than $60 billion. Its signature swoosh, a universal symbol of sport, style, and ambition.
It's critically important that when we come to the office every day, we come with an athlete mindset and we're here to serve them.
Elliott Hill spent 32 years at Nike before retiring in 2020. Since then, the storied brand began to lose ground to competitors. Rivals like Adidas finding favor in fashion circles. Upstarts like Hoka and On Running innovating on the athletic scene.
Craig, how are you?
Good to see you. Hill was brought back as CEO in October 2024 to help right the ship at Nike. See some of the magic. And shareholders are watching closely as Nike stock has dropped in recent months. In a show of support, Hill personally bought more than $1 million of stock. What's happening at Nike?
I think it's a reflection on where we are in this moment in time. We're in a cleanup mode and we're a reset mode. We're setting this business up for the next 40 years.
How could a company like Nike, I mean, one of America's greatest brands, how could it seem to have lost its way?
You know, I think there was a couple strategic shifts that happened that COVID didn't help. Where we make mistakes is when we forget that who we're serving. We're serving consumers, we're serving athletes.
How has the business changed?
The consumer's certainly more connected today, digitally. Trends seem to be moving a little faster to me than they did in the past. But the core of what we do does not change. This is called the Walk of Fame.
Hill has reorganized Nike into groups, focusing on specific sports like baseball and soccer. There's also a renewed focus on innovation with its state-of-the-art sports research lab.
New innovation called the AeroFit.
It's clear that they're betting big on this summer's World Cup, co-hosted here in the U.S. How many teams do you guys sponsor?
We have 12 teams.
The changes have brought some difficult trade-offs, including layoffs and a shift in pricing. How do you square the fewer sales with the affordability crisis that a lot of Americans are facing right now?
In terms of affordability, it's something we watch all the time. And we've been really cautious and thoughtful about when and how we take price increases for our consumer.
You said recently that tariffs are going to cost Nike about $1.5 billion this fiscal year. Where does that money come from?
Well, you know, it went straight to the government, and we're now in the process of following the guidelines that the government shared, and we're waiting to see what happens in terms of return.
But the $1.5 billion, was that, did it have
it's
to
straight
get
off the bottom line? And, you know, we tried to cover some of that with price increases and some other things that we did with our partners on the wholesale side of the business, and then also from manufacturing. But it's tough to cover that all at one time.
So some of it did have to get passed down to the consumer.
Small. But we were thoughtful about it. If you look at it, back to school, we didn't take any price increases because we wanted to make certain that we were thoughtful about the timing of those increases.
Here at Nike, Hill is part chief executive, part pitchman.
Everybody good?
So are they, and part cheerleader for the workforce of 78,000 employees. I read that when you started, you actually gave out your personal email address.
Yeah.
To all the employees.
It was crazy how many emails I received and text messages. It was humbling, and I responded to every single one of them.
You're getting choked up talking about this place.
Well, it's you know, it's not a job. It's personal.
Yeah, I get that sense from you.
Yeah.
Is that why you came out of retirement, to turn it around?
It's a place I care deeply about.
What sparks inspiration for you?
Human performance, athletes that somehow find a way to find another gear when it's needed inspires me like no other. To watch an athlete who already is great to find another level, that's what inspires me, human potential.
Craig Melvin, NBC News.
And you can watch the full sit-down interview with an NBC News subscription. Become a subscriber to get extended interviews, exclusive content, fewer ads. Scan the QR code to download the NBC News app now and subscribe. NBC covers hundreds of stories each day. You know, it's pretty tough to read, to watch, or listen to everything. So our bureau teams have selected some highlights. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions, and we call it the local. From our Midwest Bureau, a county in Michigan just declared a state of emergency after a huge water main break left thousands without water. The pipe could take weeks to fix. Schools in the area are closed until at least tomorrow. From our Southern Bureau, a new video shows police kicking out an unwanted guest at a Tennessee hotel. Staff say a black bear somehow locked itself in a bathroom on the property. Police managed to unlock the door and then made loud noises to run that bear off. Nobody injured, but a mirror inside the bathroom was broken. They'll send him a bill. From here in our D.C. Bureau, hundreds of people in Virginia are using sheep to clean up their lawns. A company called Lamb Movers sends a flock of sheep to take care of the yards by eating the weeds.
It was wonderful. It was 2 hours, and they got more done than I could have in a week.
All right, the owners of Lamb Movers, they say that this isn't just about business because, according to them, customers see Lamb Movers as sheep therapy and say the sheep bring joy wherever they go. Yeah. Still ahead, the 19-year-old pickleball pro who's already being called the GOAT. Her story in the original. To our original now, in-depth reporting on a topic that everybody's talking about, and tonight it's pickleball. And the star, fresh off a winning weekend at the league's championships in California yesterday, we're talking about Anna Leigh Waters, who's been dominating now for years before most of us even heard about pickleball. She started before she was even a teenager, and now she's widely considered to be the GOAT. NBC's Gotti Schwartz has her story.
A 19-year-old sensation now smashing the competition in the fastest growing sport in the world. Meet Anna Leigh Waters, the pickleball star, widely considered the greatest of all time in a still young but up-and-coming game. She's the most decorated pickleball player ever with 194 gold medals.
I don't see anyone being really close to her anytime soon.
Adding more hardware to her collection at this weekend's Professional Pickleball Association, or PPA, Championships.
Anna Bright and Anna Leigh Waters are champions of the PPA Finals.
A familiar feeling for Waters, who's been playing with the pros since she was 12 years old. She picked up the paddle for the first time when she and her family had to evacuate their Florida home and temporarily moved to Pennsylvania after Hurricane Irma.
We were hooked, and we played 2 to 3 times every day.
Her mom actually quit her job as a lawyer to play professionally, eventually becoming the #1 ranked female singles player in the country. And when her doubles partner dropped out before a tournament in 2019, she asked her daughter, a middle schooler at the time, to step in.
The coolest thing in my life, I think, was getting to play with her, getting to sort of like be friends and teammates.
But it wasn't all fun and games.
I really, when I was younger, didn't really understand it. A lot of people were treating me poorly on the court or would get pretty upset, call me names, whatever. But now that I'm older, I realize, the feelings they must have been going through, like losing to a 12-year-old.
Flash forward to now, she's getting recognized by some of the biggest names in sports, like tennis legend Andre Agassi.
She's one of the great competitors I've ever seen sports, period.
And yeah, even Agassi trading in his racket for a paddle, making his professional pickleball debut alongside Waters at last year's U.S. Open. A surreal moment for her mom turned coach.
I had a cardboard cutout of Andre in my basement, like when I was growing up, like playing junior tennis. Like he was an idol of mine. So like now she's like hanging out with Andre and Steffi.
Waters wins, coming on and off the court, recently signing a deal with Nike. PPA CEO Connor Perdeau saying she's been great for the game.
Having Anna Leigh's a dream come true, really.
He says when the league started in 2019, Waters took home $1,000 after winning a gold medal. And this year, he says she's going to take home $2.5 million. And she shows no signs of slowing down.
I feel like sometimes I've lived a full life and I'm only 19. A goal of mine is just to stay on top as long as possible, however long that may be.
Okay, coolest story of the day there, buddy. And by the way, I guess she's paid for college right now with $2.5 million last year. Pickleball has got this tremendous growth, but we won't see it played at the LA Olympics, right?
Yeah, not LA 2028, maybe Brisbane 2032 when Anna Leigh Waters is going to be like 25 years old. But
Right.
First, pickleball has to go super international. They have to have a governing body that will mesh with the IOC. But I'll tell you, Tom, pickleball may not be on the official Olympic roster, but pickleball will be played all over LA when the Olympics are here. And I know that may not count in other places, but it has become very popular throughout the country. It is super popular in Hollywood. It is the game that all the celebrities are playing. Selena Gomez, Larry David, Leonardo DiCaprio, the Kardashians. So you can imagine that there will be some very high-level Olympic parties when they're all here in Los Angeles, and they're all going to be saying, hey, you know what would make a great Olympic sport? Pickleball.
Yeah,
So
there you go.
We'll see what happens in Australia. Tom?
So do you play? And by the way, if the average age is about 40, no surprise, a teenager is the GOAT, right?
Yeah, well, it's so funny that we say that she's a coach. She is like a storied veteran. Remember, 7 years ago, most people didn't even know that pickleball was a thing. I play a little bit on our block. We block out some stuff, but it's much easier on the knees than normal tennis. You can imagine the longevity that she's got in her career.
No.
Tom?
Great story. As always, Gotti. Thanks, buddy. That is, by the way, you can watch more of Gotti on Stay Tuned Now every night and again every weekend at 8 o'clock right here on NBC News Now. So that's a wrap for us at this hour, but the news continues right now.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.